Aloha, everyone. I'm your host, Christina Laney Mitri, and welcome to Smart Living Hawaii's podcast, where we discuss smart homes and technology, sustainability, healthy lifestyles, and smart business. Today, we'll continue our Sustainable Leaders series, and we're going to have a talk story with Sean Anderson and Greg Williams with Full Circle Farm. And we will talk about the Full Circle Farm they established and how their regenerative practices with composting chickens, food scraps, and more lead to healthy soils. From what was once waste going to our landfills and our H-Power incinerator, we now have alternatives that can be solutions for Hawaii's future. So that's basically what we're going to dive into today. So aloha, Sean and Greg.
Aloha, thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining us today. And before we begin, I'd like to share a little bit about our guest speakers. Today we have two. So I'm going to start with Gregory Williams. Do you prefer Gregory or Greg?
Oh, we can do Greg for the podcast, it's fine.
Okay. Greg began working in regenerative agriculture in Hawaii in 1998. Wow, I graduated in 98. Working with the first organic sprout farm on Oahu to scale production island-wide. In 2002, he began working in education, bringing elementary school children from urban areas to organic farms for immersion experiences in Southern California. Greg had over a decade of experience in operations and logistic management. He's passionate about closed loop systems and helping build catalyst hubs that support change for the greater good. And moving on to Sean Anderson. He's had over 10 years experience in regenerative agriculture and composting. His degree in global studies from UC Santa Barbara helped build his global perspective and systems-based approach to problem solving. Sean is enthusiastic and passionate about composting, regenerative practices, and sharing his excitement through various educational tours and demonstrations hosted on their farm, in schools, and other organizations. So, awesome. I can't wait to dive in. Our Eco-Rotary Club of Kaka'ako was fortunate enough to do a volunteer workday with them a few months back. And I just had to do a podcast with them. They did a tour with us after our workday, and we got to learn so much about what it is they're doing, and that is what we are going to share today. So let's start with backgrounds. Let's start with Sean. Where are you originally from, and what brought you to Hawaii?
Thanks again for having us on here, and thanks for hosting this podcast and talking about these topics and sharing that with the island and with all your listeners. I was born in California. I grew up in Southern California, just outside Los Angeles. So not a farming background. Both my parents were teachers. I grew up in a urban neighborhood. Eventually moved to Northern California and then did college in Santa Barbara. And it was in Santa Barbara that I fell in love with food and farming and agriculture and began to, make the connections between food and agriculture and our sort of global environmental situation that we find ourselves in that I would call crisis. Can you hear me okay? Because it's raining where I'm at.
Yeah, it's a little,
okay,
I mean, you can still hear it. It's okay.
Okay, great. Waimanala, blessed with lots of rain. So that's where I got into agriculture, was in Santa Barbara. I stumbled upon a community garden there and kind of had an aha moment of like, hey, I don't really know anything about gardening or growing my own food. Let me get into this. Quickly made a lot of mistakes and fell in love and decided I wanted to, just gain more knowledge in growing food. And that of course led me to compost, and that led me to seeing food waste in a whole new way. And I was fortunate to move to Hawaii in 2012 with the help of my family. We found this property, which is now a Full Circle Farm. And it was a mission to sort of create a regenerative farm and the farm has had lots of different chapters over the years, in the last 11 years. And the one that we're in now is so far my favorite, with a focus on compost and education and demonstration. And the team that's here on the farm, there's 7 of us, including me and Greg, feels really good. And yeah, I'm happy to be where I am and doing what I'm doing.
Awesome. What about you, Greg?
Hey, aloha from Tahiti. I'm in Papaete. So if the internet kind of goes out, have patience. Thanks. Yeah, thanks again for having us. I was like Sean, born and raised in Los Angeles area. And I had family in Maui. So I would spend time over there as a kid. And it just resonated with me, from just finding friends there and diving and fishing as a child, with like other local kids, and something just sunk in about the way people just treated each other differently than where I grew up, a little more respect. And so I moved to Oahu in 1986. And it was shortly after that I got introduced to that farm and we read about my bio, and it was really, really great experience. It was my first experience with, kind of a more modern system that they had on this sprout farm for growing the sprouts and ensuring all of the organic criteria was met. That was really fun. And I've lived other places in the world through life, but most of that in my adult life has been in Hawaii.
Awesome. So I guess we kind of have an idea of why I always ask the question, like, what got you into the sustainable world? But I think we've already covered those topics. But how did you two meet? I guess that's a good segue.
You want to take that one, or should I, Sean?
You take it.
I wonder if we have like the same memory. It was quite a while ago. It was shortly after Sean moved here. We have a mutual friend named Paul Isaac, who I've known for quite a while. And I believe that's how Sean and I first met at the Makawa house, maybe in Kailua. They would have like kind of community jam, like hangout and like potluck at this house, and it was just a great spot. And stuff that like continues to drive us and inspire us is connectivity through, food, story, music, community, and we just became we were like kind of like mutual recognition of like, oh hey, that guy, all right, cool. And we'll be friends, and we became friends and just better friends. And then in, I think it was 2017 or 2018, I was moving to New York for a little bit, but like for a couple of weeks before I moved there, I stayed on the farm with Sean, and both of us were kind of going through transitional periods of our lives, and it was just like a really good connection. And then when I moved back to Hawaii, I ended up we reconnected, and then that's when stuff really started to expand and evolve in our work together, our support of each other, just friendship, brother, all the good stuff. It's just kept on going.
Like a bromance as Valentine's Day is coming.
Oh yeah, sure. I'll send you some Tahitian pearls, Sean, from down here.
Thank you. Yeah, well said. Yeah, I ditto all that. I mean, I think it was the type of friendship that like pretty early on we definitely just connected on I guess key philosophies about life, and so it was like it's easy to talk together. We had shared a lot of similar visions, and so it was bound to happen. I think that we'd end up doing some work together.
Awesome. So from here, I would like to dive into your full circle farm. So so I'm in real estate by trade. I don't know if you guys knew my background. And I've been doing residential real estate for like 16, 17 years, but over the past 5 or 6 years, I've stumbled into sustainability, this rabbit hole that never ends. And I've learned a lot. I started a nonprofit on sustainability and has done this, but it's also led me to kind of a full circle of, at first real estate was separate from everything that we're doing, and now it's turning into a part of sustainability in the real estate space. So I do a lot and focus on ag land and sustainable initiatives when they're needing land, um, homes and people that are wanting land to build and grow and do different things. So I'm very passionate about this. It's not as lucrative, obviously, as residential can be, but it's my passion. So I'm always interested in how people acquire land and finding ways to help support people that are farmers that are needing land, and helping connect people in that kind of way, or affordable housing and things like that too. So how did you acquire this piece of land? And I'm always curious in that kind of retrospect.
Totally. I share that same curiosity and desire to make farmland more available and more readily available, especially to folks who are passionate and want to farm in a good way and want to do it in a way that treats the earth as a stakeholder, and not just a resource to be extracted. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. I would not be here without the help of my family, my aunt and uncle, particularly Ed and Susan Catmull. They helped buy the property, and it was fee simple, and they're just big supporters of mine, big advocates of my passion, I guess I could say, and they saw that I had a passion for agriculture and for wanting to do something, and they're in a position where they could help support that. And at the beginning, it was, there was no real time limit on it. It was like, hey, let's see if this works, and for them, if it didn't, it would be kind of an investment property that they would maybe have sold if I didn't take to
Mm-hmm.
farming in the way that I have. That was 11 years ago. So now it's as long as we can keep it going, we will keep it going. And so they're just sort of our big generous supporters that made the whole thing start. And I'll say that's continued to be a theme on the farm. We've partnered with other organizations and had a lot of support. Nothing has happened on this farm by the work of just one person. Everything is many hands have come together to make this what it is.
Awesome. So how large is the piece of land that you guys have? And it's in Waimanalo for everybody who doesn't know.
It's 3 acres in Waimanalo. It was formerly a horse ranch. And it was kind of a right place, right time situation. My family found it like right as it came on the market. I think maybe even before it was even fully listed. And yeah, we had been talking. I was just about graduating from university and had these big dreams. I'm like, I'm going to be a farmer. I'm going to go work on farms around the world, and I'm going to start a farm. And at that time in my life, I was starting gardens everywhere that I could, every little open patch of land. I would can I turn that into a garden? And so when I shared that I wanted to be a farmer, they're like, yeah, okay, we can kind of see that, and then they share, I think, in the vision as well, and they understand the importance of the sustainability aspect of good farming, and all the implications that come from our food system, positive and negative, and so yeah, they're excited and wanted to help.
So maybe Greg, you could jump in as to what the farm does now, I guess, or maybe it's evolved into.
Yeah, you know, when I came to the farm, it was about to like to be more involved. It was about 3 years ago, and there's been different models that Sean can probably speak to a little bit more about, you know, farming and selling produce at the farmers market, which is incredibly challenging to the margins are so slim on, you know, unless you have like a vertical growth product that you can really support your farming. It's really challenging for small farms like everywhere. And we were just, you know, when we decided to like partner up a little bit more and have more of an intention of like where we could have something that's supported for all stakeholders, we were just looking at the farm. And it was, I mean, there's so many different like kind of micro zones in the farm that are amazing. There's, you know, about 30 plus bee boxes, beehives. There's an orchard that's got a whole different selection of trees that Sean has planted since they brought the farm into what it is currently is. They're all maturing. There's like the garden beds. There's a circular garden that's different. There's chickens like that are egg layers that are in demonstrating a type of compost called lasagna composting. Worm bins. There's a blacksmith shop. There's an apothecary. There's all sorts of really interesting ways for people to engage and kind of discover new parts with them in themselves at the farm. And we see that from people of all ages. Like when we'll have keikis from school come over and they're kind of experiencing the composting area and seeing the scale of like, even though our scale is piloting and it's, you know, we think, well, this is relatively small because we do know how much food waste there is. It's really great to see like people that come and visit the farm, like the kids, where they see us dumping in hundreds and hundreds of pounds of food waste at a time. And they're just kind of like, what? Like, we had no idea it was so big. And then there's, you know, like Sean's wife and Julianne, who are at the farm, have a business called Nurture and Bloom, where they do a lot of supportive events for pre and postnatal, family-oriented, like wellness through diet. I mean, they can speak to more of that, but like there's so many different aspects of like. Luckily, we're able to take care of this place. And by the way that we've developed as a community to take care of the place, it really fosters some amazing experiences and learning and trading of knowledge with other people that get to come to that place, which is like the best. That's it's in our vision statement of like what we aim to do with being have the privilege and like honor of having a place so beautiful to put our energy into, which we have the ability to share with our community.
Awesome. Do you have anything else to chime in on, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, Greg spoke to it well. I mean, yeah, the farm has had many chapters. It was originally called Greenrose Farm. And you know, like Greg said, we focused on growing vegetables, and we gave a really good effort towards that way of farming. And then around the time that Greg and I met, it was like the farm was really in this like transitional space. And I think also like I was in a big transitional space where, you know, when I started the farm, the focus was just like, let's do regenerative ag. And that's so broad that, you know, it's very easy to start doing like trying to do everything. And we were like so excited and with so much passion and like energy, and like all my people that were there in those early days were just like, you know, let's build a pizza oven, you know, and all of a sudden we're building a pizza oven. And like, it's just easy to start doing like a million things, which is because like, that's what's possible in farming and like in agriculture. Like, you know, you want to build something, all of a sudden you start building it. And now you're like a builder, and then you're like the sink breaks and now you're a plumber, and like you like doing all these things. And that was amazing. It's an amazing learning experience. And it got to a point where it was like overwhelming and kind of kind of near burnout of like what just like so spread so thin, you know?
I figured that because you started listing so many things, and
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it was probably at least twice as much of what it is you do now.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if maybe not. I mean, I think I still put the same energy, but now it's just much more focused. And that was like the need. And I actually hadn't left the farm for more than 2 weeks in the first 6 years of the farm. And so I was ready for like a little break, and I left the farm for a little bit, and in that time away realized, like, you know, because I was like questioning, like, am I even into farming anymore? Like, you know, what am I, you know, what is this farm? What is it doing? And came back, refocused primarily on the things that I felt, you know, were most important to me and that the farm could have a biggest impact in. And one was education and demonstration. As you mentioned, like on your tour, it's something that everyone on the farm loves to be a part of. It's something the farm lends itself so well to. It's like, it's a beautiful place to walk around. And so it lends itself to being a place, a easy place to learn and, you know, be introduced to new things. And that was, I was passionate about that. And the second was compost. It's like specifically around soil health, compost, and the issue of food waste. And I thought, great, let's focus on that. Then came the name Full Circle Farm. And, you know, with that decision came like, okay, we don't need that. We don't need that. We don't need that. And then things began to open up, which I think put us in the position to say yes to eventually the machine that you spoke of that started off this new endeavor that Greg and I are on, which we're calling Full Circle Solutions Hawaii, which is our sort of umbrella for what we're putting our energy into in terms of composting, but really beyond composting to all types of closed loop solutions. We're just, our first stage and our first focus is on compost.
Awesome. So before we get into the composting facility that you guys have, Sean, can you give us a 101 for those of you who may not know much on farming, with regenerative farming and composting, kind of like a 101 on composting for everybody, besides the fact that everybody could just go and watch that show on Netflix. That probably helps too, but
what show is that?
Remember, you know, the one with Woody Harrelson was.
Oh, right. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Kiss the Ground.
Kiss the Ground. Yeah, highly recommend.
Yeah. Great organization. Yeah, great organization doing great work. And I would say that their website is full of even better resources than their Netflix documentary. But so here's the 101. Compost refers to the natural process of decomposition. Things break down and decompose. We see it happening all the time, right? From wood that's just left on the ground, it starts to rot. Leaves fall, they break down, and food starts to mold, right? And starts to liquefy. That's decomposition. Now there's lots, so that's basically it. Now compost refers to sort of like specifically decomposing materials with an intended purpose. And that intended purpose is to return it to soil and to make a soil amendment to apply to feed plants and return nutrients back to the earth. And there's a few different ways to do it. The two main categories are anaerobic and aerobic. Aerobic refers to with oxygen, anaerobic without. Anaerobic decomposition, if controlled, can be beneficial. It can produce off-gassing of methane, which can be captured if it's done in a controlled way and used for energy. But typically, most of the food waste on the planet is breaking down anaerobically and not by intention. It's breaking down anaerobically in landfills layered with trash. And that off-gassing of methane and carbon dioxide and nitrogen are going up into the atmosphere. And it's one of the leading causes of climate change and greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Now, the opposite is if we do aerobic composting. This is grabbing food waste, other organic material, and mixing it in the right proportions of nitrogen, carbon, and air and water, we can actually do the opposite and pull carbon out of the atmosphere, sequester it, basically lock it into the soil in a really stable form where it can live in soil for thousands of years. And soils that are high in carbon hold more water, which makes them both drought and flood resistant. Hold more water means it holds more biology. Biology is microbes, microorganisms that are actually responsible for converting nutrients for plant growth. So we're led to healthier food that grows out of soil that's rich in carbon. And ultimately, it's just better for the environment in general because we need to start pulling those gases out of our atmosphere. That's essentially what's causing the climate change situation that we're in. And food waste is one of the leading causes.
Okay. So
did that do enough of a 101? I can do a little bit even more simple on like how to make compost if you want.
How about we explain your system and how it works, because that kind of helps too.
Sure.
So just dive right in.
I'll say a little bit about what we used to do, like briefly, which will help.
Yeah,
explain
exactly.
compost,
Because I know
and I'll let
after talking to Aloha Harvest, they were saying how, because before all of like the composting facility that you had, I know that you guys did composting without a facility, to help with your soils. So definitely explain that, because that's what a lot of people can do on their own if they wanted to go down that route.
Yeah, if you've got space, if you've got a yard, you can compost. Now the basics are you need, I said it earlier, you need carbon, nitrogen, air, and water. That's the basics of what you need to make an aerobic compost pile. Carbon's going to come, we could also classify carbon, a lot of people call it browns because it's usually dry stuff. So it's dry, brown, carbon, wet, green, nitrogen. That's a really great way to like sort of simplify it. Typically things like dry leaves, wood chips, paper, cardboard, sawdust, wood shavings. Those are all dry carbon materials. And then you have nitrogen, green, wet. So that would be green leaves, food scraps, fresh cut grass, fruits and vegetables, even manure is usually considered a high green. And those things are usually wet too. And then of course you need the air and you need water. The very simple way to compost is just to combine those things, those dry and wet, brown and green, together in about, typically it's like a 60-40, 70-30 ratio, dry to wet. And you'll really be able to tell as you start doing it if nothing's happening, too dry. If it's too wet, it'll be stinky, it'll look funky, it might have a odorous smell. That means it's gone anaerobic. So it needs either more dry stuff in it or it needs more oxygen. And so that's like the basics of where you can start. And that's what we were doing here on the farm. We were layering mulch as our brown. That's chipped up branches and leaves that we get delivered from tree trimmers on the island. And we would layer that with food scraps or food waste and continue to layer brown, green, till it got to a certain size. And then we would stop adding to that pile for a little bit and eventually come through in about a couple of weeks and start turning it with the tractor. And that turning helps one to mix the material, but also to aerate it. And then naturally it just starts breaking down more and more. And it gets hot. The heat comes from aerobic bacteria bouncing off of each other and generating heat. And that's where the heat comes from. They thrive in that heat. And we were able to do on the farm, we were doing about 2,000 pounds of food waste a month, about 500 pounds a week. And we probably could have grown that to maybe 3 or maybe 4 before we got the machine. And I'll let Greg take it away for what we do now with the machine.
Thanks, Sean. So yeah, as Tom was saying, one of the things he had begun doing was diverting the food waste from the major surf competitions on the North Shore. And he was working in tandem with sustainable coastlines primarily to do that work. And then I started joining in with that. And it was, I mean, all of this was just like such an incredible community alignment, like happening at the right time, because the lockdown was about to start, and we were trying to look for more of an anchor on the farm to have, you know, as a something that would just mark a lot of boxes for where we were hoping the farm would go. And the Earthflow, which is the industrial scale food waste composting device, the first of its kind in Hawaii, was originally supposed to go to Kokua Farms on the North Shore in Haleiwa, and it was not able to. So Sustainable Coastlines approached Sean and said, hey, we've got this opportunity. We've been, you guys have already been diverting this food waste. Would you like to partner with us and Food Bank Hawaii and like Frost Foundation and 11th Hour Racing, who did a lot of the funding, to be a pilot, to help us make this pilot program to, one, prove it can be done, to get it fully permitted with the Department of Health to normalize this kind of industrial scale composting, and to prove that it can also be a business that succeeds. And Sean and I talked about it, and it was like a full body yes, because we just loved the opportunity of it. So we did everything, you know, we called on friends. We mostly he and I did a lot of this work, but we did get a lot of help of prepping the site. The day that the machine arrived, it arrived on this huge rig that had like a side, it was a side loading of the container because all the components were inside of it. And so it couldn't be like dumped like that. It had to be like, and the driver, she was like absolutely like surgical the way to get that machine in. I had to like jump up and cut the corner of like a roof off. Like we were like, this thing is getting in here. We had to cut some limbs off a very nice mango, which the mango's even bigger, fruiting more now. And we got the Earthflow there. And through more community engagement and sourcing out with professionals that we have relationships with, we did the fabrication. We had the Green Mountain team come out and give us the rundown of how to operate this machine and show us the technology of it. And basically what it's doing is taking, the Earthflow takes what Sean was explaining, and it just amplifies that. Like it used to take, what do you say, rough, like to make a pickup, like a big pickup truck size amount of finished compost, it would take roughly what, like 8 months, Sean, around there?
Yeah, 6 to 8 months, yeah.
Yeah.
That's very expensive work. It's very expensive soil.
Yeah. And so the Earthflow is able to scale that up to where, you know, it can be, it can cut that time almost in a third to make the same amount, and also much larger quantities. The way it works is it's got it's, you know, in a 9 foot tall, 20 foot, this particular model is 9 foot tall, 20 foot shipping container that there's an auger that's on kind of like an axis that moves throughout the machine. We could spend all day with the tractor and we would never get it to mix the way it does, which accelerates the composting process. The floor is aerated. We always say, like, with a bunch of pukas, like air hockey table, so we can control all these systems. The gas, the off gassing goes through what we is like we call a biofilter. It's basically an IBC tote full of mulch, which scrubs the air. And so that's one of the things that's the best about this machine is it does not leak. There's no leachate into the water table. There's very little odor compared to other methods of composting, and it really reduces any vectors like bugs or rats. And it produces really great, and it's also just fun. Like on a nice hill, like we'll sit there and we'll just like watch it doing its thing, and we just marvel at the amount of energy that's being produced. And we were lucky enough to have Revolution Solar as a partner, and they generously donated a very powerful, like 2 Tesla Powerwall batteries system that runs it all. So it runs that, it runs our office. We have an education center. What do we call it? What is it? I forgot the name of it. What is it? The Solution Center. That we're working on in tandem with Sustainable Coastlines to just refine our messaging, how best to like pass this knowledge on to anybody that comes to the farm. So it basically what we do is like, let's say Food Bank Hawaii or Aloha Harvest, they drop off 800 pounds or so of usually fruit and veg that can no longer be served to humans, which we want to have food security for everyone. There's also that component of like why we're doing this, try to help bring awareness to that. And so we take that 800 pounds, we weigh it, we get all the data, we put that into the machine. Then we take, this is where the kind of it's those cooking shows where like, we're going to add a dash of this, so boom. And Sean and I, through the several years of using the machine in this climate, have an understanding of how much mulch then to put in to balance that out. And the machine can take input roughly about 1,000 pounds a day for capacity, which is awesome. We dream of it growing more, and like having more of these machines. But we input that, and then, you open the back bay doors, which open completely after it's all gone through. And it's just like, it's always like, wow, it's like always this reveal of something different, because there's so much different life that is taking place in this process. And so sometimes we open it and there's just fingering of different mycelium fungi, mushrooms growing out, or there's different kinds of it's just amazing. And then we take that. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that it's also, you're able to put certain types of composting, like single-use things in. Maybe you can mention that.
We are
how you're
currently
incorporating that.
Yep, we currently are. You want to? Yeah, I was just talking, so Sean can handle that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the machine is able to compost single-use compostable materials, the fibrous materials, and even the plasticky stuff. And we've done test trials. We're currently not permitted to do that, but I say with a big yet. That is, we're hoping to get that permitted, and it's only a matter of time. And it's for good reason. It's important that we test this material well, and make sure that it's actually, even if it physically composts to the human eye, there may be trace microplastics or even harmful chemicals that could be left behind in the soil. And so because these materials are relatively new, it's important to take our time with that. But yes, once we are permitted to do that, we'll be accepting that stuff. And it's worth having the conversation, maybe not now, but it's worth just posing of like, is single-use compostable that much better than, it's still single use, right? And I think ultimately when we're thinking about sustainability, when we're thinking about regenerative practices, when we're thinking about resilience, perhaps a better conversation is around how do we avoid single use altogether. And so those are questions that we think about. But in the meantime, it's very easy to say that their single-use compostable is better than single-use plastic. So if that's a transitional tool, then that's kind of sometimes what we have to do. But I want to just reiterate back what Greg was saying, of just like a major thank you to all the supporters. Like, big props to Sustainable Coastlines really for kind of having this initial vision of bringing this machine to the island. They saw a huge opportunity because of the waste they were diverting from these surf contests of like, heck, why isn't Hawaii? Why don't we have a, you read on those cups. Actually, it was on those compostable things that we're talking about that I think helped spur the idea. You read on there, must be composted in an industrial composting facility. And so Executive Director of Sustainable Coastlines, Raphael Bergstrom, started going like, well, do we have one of those? What does it take to have one of those in Hawaii? And that's what led him to finding this machine that we have. It's called an in-vessel machine. And so it was, relatively, in terms of systems that can handle that, the easiest way to get one of those to Hawaii, as opposed to building a multi-million-dollar industrial composting facility. And that's something that we like about this machine, is that it's, in terms of barrier to entry, it's relatively easy. It's in a shipping container, so it comes already enclosed, as opposed to having to lay down cement and run piping through cement. These larger composting facilities cost lots to build, and while this is an expensive piece of machinery, it's significantly less than what it takes to build other industrial composting facilities. So the price tag on one of these things is a little over $100,000, and depending on the site that you're putting at it, you're going to need another 100K or so for equipment and facilities, but then you're ready to go. So that's for $250,000 as opposed to several $1 million of building a composting facility. You can be processing, which we're doing now on our site, about 20,000 pounds of food waste a month, which is significant.
So just on it, I'm just kind of, I guess I don't know the details on this, but for the ones that are those big ones in the mainland that do these cups and all this plastic, not plastic stuff, do they do the process the same in just a bigger facility, or if there's another way of breaking these things down into stuff?
I think typically what it is it involves some element of shredding and grinding material. It also most likely involves forced aeration, which Greg spoke to. Our machine has positive aeration, and that's to bring the temperatures up and to maintain high temperatures. When you feed oxygen and air into the bacteria that's in a compost pile, it's like blowing air into a fire. It stokes it. So it's feeding all that bacteria and keeping them at that high temperature range, which is about 150 degrees. It's above between 130 and 170 is our ideal temperature. Below 130, it's not hot enough. We're not killing pathogens. Above 170, it's getting a little too hot and you're actually starting to kill some of the beneficial bacteria. So the sweet spot is between 130 and 170. And that's what this machine is able to keep our material and our compost at throughout the whole process.
That's cool. So I guess I wanted to dive into, I know we briefly were talking about it, but some of like the laws and the different certifications and the challenges that you guys have to the hoops you got to go through in order to make this work, because I think the ultimate goal would be to have this on all islands. I mean, we have an H power, and it's I mean, I don't want to say we take it for granted, but we do just dump everything we can in there now. And it seems to be helping, but that doesn't help the neighbor islands by any means. Because they don't get to put their food waste. I mean, it's just their landfills are just getting filled. So what are the types of things that you guys are challenged with? And I know that you said, and I remember Greg mentioning the process that it takes to get these certifications, and with things with Department of Health and whatnot. And maybe how it led up to this, because I know you were telling some stories of maybe how it was in the past and why they're so strict now and things like that. I don't think people know much about composting. I know I didn't, and like how like dirty or unsanitary like they can be. Things like that.
Definitely. What you're referring to is we hear a ghost story about a composting operation, and it was in Waimanalo, and the people they had good intention, but it was mismanaged. So it created a giant pile of rotting, unkept, it's just rot. So then you're inviting in flies, rats,
like a landfill,
like a landfill, and just neglected. And so, that's also not very healthy for the water table if that stuff is like all leaking into, if it's going into a stream. So there was, the way that the health department was looking at that was sometimes it happens with bureaucracy is they like just no more of this at all. You know, not doing any more of this. So when the earth flow in vessel it's the first of its kind here. So it did take a lot of kind of onboarding, and luckily we had some rock stars. I want to shout out, Jennifer Milhorn, who did a lot of the legwork with the permitting and the diligence of compliance, with the health department, to be able to ensure them that this thing wasn't contributing to hazardous situations like that had happened previously, which, some people, depending on the perspective, like it's taking too long, it's taking too short. There were definitely times when we had been told like, okay, here, get ready guys, because 2 weeks, that thing's coming. And that window would pass, and then they would be like, try wait. And then, months would go by. And like kind of looking back on it now, I think, I don't know, I'm just speaking for myself, but I understand that why these things take time to ensure for as we move into a more triple, quadruple, all sorts of bottom line thinking, as we, calibrate the way we try, at least, because we see what the kind of approaching lifestyle of single use and throw away and is completely unsustainable. Like understanding that like not only are these processes in place hopefully for a reason, but people like us and the community that we build are able to change those laws because of such a group effort, and like many hands making that work happen to be able to do that. And now what our hope is that we've laid a template for more of these machines to be permitted. Currently, we are permitted to do the composting of everything that Sean said, but aside from those PLA single uses. And what we are doing to be in compliance right now is we're sending soil test samples to be tested for E. coli and
Salmonella.
why am I blanking? Salmonella. So once those come back clean, several times, which shouldn't be a problem, we should be fully permitted to be able to sell the compost as well.
So right now
And
you guys are
also,
making it, and for those people that don't know, composting is soil that, once you finish, it's like a really good soil. And it's like gold for a farmer, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
currently,
Oh, yeah.
where does your soil go to now? Because I know it can't be sold. So is it just donated? Is that how it works?
A lot of it is
Yeah.
used with the farm too, and
Yeah.
and other farms in neighboring. And part of you want to speak about the compost collective because that ties in at all?
Yeah, could you explain that? Actually, I have a
Sure.
client that moved into Waimanalo not too long ago, so I was gonna send this podcast so they could maybe join your collective, because they're probably, I think they're like
Absolutely.
right down the street from you guys.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So we, over the last, since getting the machine, we've experimented with lots of different input sources, right? There's lots of sources for food scraps. We've worked with restaurants, we've worked with schools, we've worked with and continue to work with the Hawaii Food Bank, Aloha Harvest, and then of course there's residential food scraps, right? And so we started a subscription program that we call the Compost Collective, which allows residents who want to compost, but for lots of different reasons can't or don't have the time or the resources, or maybe they're apartment dwellers, they don't have the space, but they really want to make sure that their food waste gets composted. They can sign up for our membership, and they can essentially get a bucket, a 5-gallon bucket to fill their food scraps with, and they get unlimited drop-offs in the month. And for most people, they fill a bucket in about a week, so they drop off their bucket about once a week, and they have the convenience of coming to the farm, dropping their full bucket, and grabbing a clean, empty bucket to take home. And then Greg and I take care of all of the composting and all the bucket washing to make it a really convenient service. And that's about $25 a month currently, with just the one drop-off location being on the farm. And we have a goal of starting a new drop point at the Kailua Farmers Market, where people who are already coming to the market can bring their bucket and swap it there if that's convenient for them. And then as soon as we are permitted to sell our finished compost, all of our subscribers will get a little bit of compost back every year, just as a sort of a give back of like, hey, thanks for being a member. And then they'll also most likely get a discount on buying compost, because in order to keep our operations sustainable, we do need to sell compost as a finished product to help generate revenue for our company. And it is, as you said, is a really high quality product that we plan to do lots with, like awesome. Blends, little soil blends, and lots to come on that. So stay tuned for really awesome.
How
soil
long do
mixes.
you think it'll be until you guys can actually sell your product, like get that stamp of approval?
I think we'll have the stamp of approval within the next 2 months, 2 or 3 months. Cool. That's my fingers crossed. We're not far, and I just want to say it's for good reason, because we're doing something that hasn't been done, and although it's being done successfully in other places, it's important to test this stuff, because food scraps are treated as a potentially hazardous material, and it's true that they sometimes, if not treated properly, it is potentially hazardous. And so it's important, and we're confident in our methods. And so far, all the testing has looked really good. So we're fine to jump through the hoops, and when we're permitted, we'll be happy to be selling our compost.
Okay. And let's see, I know we'll be wrapping up soon. I did want to, if you could share a little bit more about your volunteer days that you guys usually host, that would be great too.
Sure. We have monthly volunteer days. Throughout the year, it'll be third Saturdays, and you can find out more information about that either on our website, fullcirclefarmhi.com, or on our Instagram, fullcirclefarmhi. And those are just really fun opportunities to engage with community, get your hands dirty, be a part of a communal effort work experience, typically learn something, and we have a fun time together.
And then what exactly do you do? Do you have different schools come out to your facility? Is it like a field trip sort of thing?
We do, yeah. We're open to field trips. We love bringing kids on the farm. We really love sharing the farm with anyone. We like to say, kids of all ages, so that includes all of us. We're all kids at heart, and so we like to create events for kids of all ages.
I'm gonna talk to my daughter's school and see. I don't know what grades. There's usually is there certain levels or grades that probably cover this, or is it like anybody? Really anybody.
We've had preschool through university, and and beyond. We have adult groups come out to the farm as well. So there's something, I think, for everyone here.
Awesome. And let's see, what do you guys project your future to look like from, I guess, next 5, maybe 10 years from now? Like, where I know Greg had some ideas and things like with your guys's full circle solutions and everything. So I was curious to hear some other things to look forward to from you guys.
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, I think that, so there's some sort of, I'm in Tahiti, and there's like some really loud drumming just erupted, which is great. It kind of made me be like, yes, we're going to 5X. We're going to have at least 5 more of these machines. What we hope to do is expand this the community compost collective to a point where that grows and scales. We've done some numbers on like how we want to, we're going to start so look for us at the Kailua Farmers Market. Eventually we'll be in Kaka'ako Farmers Market as well. We want to have TVs in like different the different islands, and whether that's Sean and I through Full Circle Solutions, doing the design, maintenance, operations, building, kind of modular components of that. The drums are coming back. I don't think they can hear those.
We can't, I don't know, I can't hear it. Can you hear it, Sean?
No, I
I
can't.
think there's like
I think your
firecrackers. That's good you
AirPods
guys
are
can
doing
hear.
wonders.
Yeah, okay, great. And just like not like having composting be our foundation of starting point. To eventually partner with people that are have different visions than us to help create more sustainable solutions and closed loop systems, and bring them into this collective and help expand that. That's some of the dreams.
Well, I know that I've been trying to work on with our Eco Rotary to find a high school that would like to adopt the Lunch Out of Landfills program that the SRAG, which is the environmental group for Rotary International, pretty much. They've kind of helped launch this program in COVID, and it's I did do a podcast with the people that originated this on the East Coast, but they have, a composting facility, like industrial size one. So they're able to ship all their stuff and take it all to there because it's really close, like 15 miles away or something. And so we've been talking with them. They're helping us set something up. It would just be a matter of getting a high school, like Rotor Interact Club, that would want to run this and then do it for an elementary school's food waste from their lunches. And so I think I briefly chatted with you guys about it, but the goal would then be to get all of that food waste once a week to you guys. So I don't know, it's in the works. We just have to find those dedicated participants that would want to do something like this. But I could see this as a pilot happening in the DOE. And if it does get to this level, like it is over there on the East Coast, it's now getting into legislation. It is now pushing schools and getting funding for doing this at like a lot of schools within their county. And they're diverting about 86% of their waste from the lunches. And a lot of it is going to composting. So if we're able to do this, I would love to see, I feel like it would push the momentum towards the supporting these facilities all over if all of a sudden we're going to do this at every elementary school. So that's the goal. I mean, that would be an amazing thing to do.
We share that vision. We'd love to see that happening. I think ultimately it'd be great to see machines like this at all types of schools, universities, any place that is producing X amount of food waste, which a lot of places are. This is a great application, and I think building out a model, especially with the unique situation of being on an island, it makes sense to have composting happening. I think the biggest takeaway is for people who are new to composting is that food waste is a confusing word. We hear waste and we think no more value. And what we're trying to change is that it's not waste unless it's thrown away. Before it's wasted, it's a resource. Mm-hmm. It's a very valuable resource that can be returned into soil health and can play a role in the climate change, crisis that we're in. And more importantly, doing something about it early will help us to get the stuff that isn't yet waste to hungry people. It's really a low-hanging fruit across all those things. It's hunger, nutrient deficiency, and climate change. With one simple action of composting and looking at food waste differently, we can start to divert it and get it to hungry people and back into the soil.
Awesome. I think you've already given us ways to reach out to you. Do you guys have a specific email that if somebody wanted to send you guys something specific, they could email you?
Yes,
Yeah, we
and I
do.
didn't mention.
That,
Go ahead.
go
I
ahead.
think, and our Instagram is FCS Hawaii, which stands for Full Circle Solutions Hawaii. You can find us on Instagram. You can find our website is fullcirclesolutionshawaii.com. One nice big, or is it HI? Full Circle Solutions.
HI.
Yeah, Full Circle Solutions HI.com. And you can reach out to connect at fullcirclesolutionshi.com with any email questions.
Awesome.
Yeah, that email address goes to Sean and I,
Okay,
who are the
great.
only two, are currently the only two employees.
Well, hopefully that'll be changing soon when you guys expand.
Yeah.
I think, oh, I did have one other question. It was kind of off of the composting facilities. Is there like a zoning of where they can be, or can they, because of how, you know, they're confined and everything, can they really be anywhere? Can they be on a residential spot, or do they have to be on more industrial or ag, or is there something specific to those terms with this?
That's a good question. That was part of why it didn't go to Kakua originally, and it's because there was a bill. I think it's since been changed, but I'm not 100% positive about that. Certain waste management activities can't be within a certain radius of residential areas or schools, for example. But I think that's been changed to remove composting from the general umbrella of waste management. If not, that's something that we can work towards, is separating composting from all other types of waste management. Because of course it makes sense. We don't want new dumps, going in residential areas, but composting, I think has been shown in lots of other places to be different and to be safe. And so, we may look to other states for how they regulate and for models. California, for example, I think that they have a rule where you can do composting up to a certain amount of tonnage. I think it's like 30 tons or something annually before you need to get certain permits. And so there may be something like that we can look to as a model for how to approach expanding composting here in Hawaii.
I mean, even in San Francisco, right? I mean, they have a composting bin that you have to throw your trash in, your compost into now by law.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
which may happen.
I guess
here
that
as well.
leads me really quick too into, are there any specific bills that you guys are pushing right now in Ledge? Or something to be aware of? I always like to throw that in there when we're in this time period.
I'm sure there are. I wish I was better prepared. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there are. I know that there's one, but it's not really related to composting, but it's about deep water dredging. But I don't have any off the top of my head to share.
Okay, no, just if you did, that'd be great.
We do discuss this with some of the people that are writing legislature. And that's like one of the things we have been trying to engage, like a talk story around, but none specific right now, like that is on our radar.
Well, I feel if we don't have the one that you mentioned about it being composting, if that's not already in place, that should definitely be something we look into.
Yeah.
I know Sustainable Coastlines and Surfrider, and I help with the cesspool task force, and even Sierra Club, a lot of them do a lot of these things. So I'm sure if it comes down to it, you guys have a lot of helpful partners. So thank you guys so much for what you do. And I hope this will bring you some more volunteers, and maybe I can get our daughter's school in there for a little tour sometime soon, and working on the
love
land.
that. We would love that.
Thank you so much. And
yes,
I think that wraps up everything so much. So really appreciate your guys' time. I know it's eating into your workday. So don't forget to also subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on smartlivinghi.org. and look under the podcast there, or you can go to any podcast platform to listen to any of our podcasts. We do put this now that we have Zoom, and we put it on our YouTube as well. And you can find us on Instagram at Smart Living Hawaii. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
mahalo.
Thank
Live
you.
smart.
Mahalo. Thank you.